Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lynette Perry Young. I'm the Deputy Director for the National Coalition Institute here at CADCA. And I just wanted to welcome you to this webinar Wednesday event where we're delighted to have Colbert as our facilitator, trainer, and expert, have his expertise to lead this discussion. We have a number of activities that we're launching this year, and we're so excited that we'll be able to share some of those things with you at the conclusion of this webinar. I want, on behalf of our President, CEO, and all of our leaders here at CADCA and staff, thank you for joining us on this webinar, and have a wonderful day. Turn it over to you, Colbert.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome. We're going to have a good time. If we don't, you don't have to report that to Lynette or Samantha. But looking forward to talking and thinking about what does effective leadership look like. And we're going to get into that. I know Samantha has a few things that she has to say, but here, let me get the slides here. And Sam?
So thank you, Colbert and Lynette. So welcome to our Wednesday webinar series. This is a series that we have on a monthly basis, CADCA and DFC, to highlight trending topics in the United States. And we really highlight our NCI instructors and also some internal CADCA staff. Today, we're going to be covering effective leadership, which I'm really excited about. We have Colbert Prosper. He has been with us since 2011. He started with us as a youth. He knows every level of leadership. He is the man to know. And as you already know from the music, it's already a party. So I'm going to shoot this back to Colbert. Please let us know if you have any questions. There's going to be some housekeeping later. I'll also put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat. I'll be monitoring the QA box, but everyone should also have my email if you have any questions afterwards, resources, upcoming trainings, whatever you may have a question about. Our Wednesday webinar series really comes from the field and what everyone says they need, what coalitions say they need. So if you have, hey, are you doing a webinar on this? Are you doing a training on this? Please reach out, and I know we definitely have something for you. So with that being said, back to Colbert, the one and only. Thank you again.
Appreciate you, Samantha. How much time I got, Samantha? Because I can go on and on about this. Well, how much time do you need so you to do what you need to do?
We're at 106. We got you until 2:30, and remember, we want to leave some time at the end for some Q&A. And you know we like to talk, even just me and you. We like to talk. So do with that with what you will. All right.
All right. So I'll give you 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. All right. So I know when I can. So Colbert Prosper, originally from the 954 Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the bottom. If you're looking for the realest, that's where we're at. Let me tell you something about me. I'm going to tell you that I have been doing coalition work since the age of 13. So when it comes to leadership, coalition, changing my community, this is a part of my rearing. I started with the Broward Youth Coalition. This is in Broward County, and the picture to the left down, that was when I was in high school. Middle picture was in high school when I was a lot thinner and a lot more hair. I just need you to understand that my coalition has been producing youth leaders for decades. I'm an alumni of that. That is my history. Our community said it is that important, that critical, that we invest the time, the energy, and the monies needed to develop our young people. And I am a product of that. But it's not me. I'm not the only one. So here you got the twins at Boston University studying policy because of the coalition work that they've done. Other folks, we've got Miss Lee here. She wrote her book while being a youth leader in the coalition. She graduated from Howard University and was on Black Girls Rock BET for the work that she has been doing. We also have Ms. Lawrence here, who's been working with our youth and also the CDC on health equity, and we've been producing leaders since. So when I talk about leadership, I'm not going to talk about the fact that, you know, I studied it in grad school and I did research on it. I want to talk about it from a standpoint of this is what helped me to become the person that I am when we talk about coalition leadership. And when a coalition has effective leadership, this is the outcome. What would it mean if your coalition activated 10% of the youth in your county, in your township, in your city? What would that mean? What type of change would that be? DFC has two goals: increasing community collaboration and reducing substance use among young people. How many young people will we have changed if we activated 10% of the young people in our communities? More questions to come, but definitely take that in. What would that mean? And then in your position, in whatever position, in whatever role you have it in your coalition, what would it mean to enhance your leadership or your coalition leadership? We're going to look at some data. We're going to look at what people are doing. We're going to see what are the challenges, but most importantly, what are the best coalitions doing in order to get the result impact that they want to achieve. Today's objectives, we're going to define leadership. What does that mean? Where does it come from? Describe transformational leadership model. So where does the model come from? What is the impetus or the thesis of that model? And then formulating action steps based on the 4 components of transformational leadership. I've got some things in the chat box. Sam, are you taking care of that, or you want me to?
I'm taking care of it.
All right, cool. So let me know. Prevention works. We know that when a community has a community coalition, and that coalition is working towards preventing substance use, misuse, and disorders, that coalition can see a reduction of substance use, misuse, and disorders up to 40%, depending on the substance and depending on the population. My thesis today is that there's a correlation between effective coalition leadership and the prevention and the rate of substance use, misuse in our communities. That's what I'm saying today. You ain't got to believe me, but we'll find out. So I've been thinking about this, right? Again, leadership, what does leadership mean? I've been able and fortunate to work with hundreds of coalitions domestically, internationally, and just really thinking about what are the type of leaders that we see that make the changes that what the White House wants us to do, but also what we go into this work wanting to do, right? So I've just been, for over a decade, I've just been thinking about who are the type of leaders or what are the coalitions that are taking the lead in order to prevent substance misuse and impact. I've been looking at literature, just reading what is an effective coalition, what are the elements of an effective of coalition, what are our scholars writing, and what are we finding when it comes to those high impact coalitions. And so I've been also talking to coalition leaders that are making those changes, that are achieving their goals and that are using their logic models. And what I've come to the point is that those coalitions have good leaders. And so it's like, all right, had me thinking, What is a good leader? In a chat box, what is a good leader? What is a a good leader? What is good leadership? Talk to me. I've got inclusive and fair, someone who's willing to listen and open, a team player, someone who listens more than they talk, okay? Someone who empowers others. A good leader listens, one who leads by example, they walk the talk. Someone who is effective, a good leader recognizes other people, honest about growth and providing feedback, persistent, agreed team player, someone who leads by example, treat others as equals, self-aware, well-informed, good leadership encourage leadership from others, okay, reflects the mission of the organization, servant leadership, authentic, someone who's good at listening, communication, honest, trustworthy, respectful, and assertive. Talk about some competencies there. Good leadership goes hand in hand with good stewardship. Someone who motivates and encourages others, empowers others to lead, persistent, lead by example, knowledge based and sincere, being an active listener, being good leadership is surrounding yourself with intelligent, capable, driven people and allowed to do this work. What? Did y'all look at my PowerPoint before this presentation? Right. All of those things are attributes or characteristics of a good leader. We know when they exist and know when they don't. I was working with General Price several years ago on some leadership and working with specifically growing Latinx people to not only go into prevention, but stay in prevention. So we did a whole initiative and we had General Price come and speak about leadership. And one of the main things that he spoke about was the reflection piece, looking at our own selves. Like, are we a representation of those characteristics that we just mentioned? Are we personifying the image of a good leader that we would want to work with or even and follow, right? And so throughout this presentation, and especially when I'm talking about transformational leadership, I want you to be thinking about, have I done these things? Have I witnessed these things? And also, how can I do these? How can I do these better? We're not perfect. We can't get it right all the time, but we can also and always reflect on what we have done, have said, and how we have shown up, and to see if there is a better version of that we could personify. So as we go through this, think about this in your own role, and also think about how you can show up, and um, and how you can help your coalition members. Very good, very good. So transformational leadership, and Dr. Burns was really thinking about leadership, and at that time, and this is during the 1970s and 1980s, you definitely start to see people are talking about transactional leadership, where leaders ask followers to do something, and those followers are supposed to respond. And Dr. Burns was like, well, I don't know if that's all the way right, because a leader can say anything to a follower and expect him to follow it, and then they may not be a moral leader. So Dr. Burns was really trying to figure out what leadership model can I create that not only is transform the leader itself, but also transform followers and hold people accountable to effectiveness and social change. So Dr. Burns was like, all right, how do we create a model or a leadership model based in science that holds people to an ethical standard that improves people's relationships with one another, but also create a structure to create new leaders. And so Burns had the position of leaders are not born, instead they evolve, and through structure, intention, motivation, values, and goals. And so Burns sees leadership as a process of transformation. And so the current definition of transformational leadership refers to the leader moving the follower beyond immediate self-interest to idealized influence, inspiration, intellectual stimulation, individual consideration. It elevates the follower's level of maturity, ideas, as well as concerns for achievement, self-actualization, and the well-being of others, the organization, and society. So some of y'all talked about inspiration. Some of y'all talked about intellectual stimulation, right? Being curious, innovation, willing to listen, asking people to go beyond their own self-interest. So transformational leadership says that this leader is really creating a relationship with their followers that motivates that follower to go beyond their own self-interest to reach that greater goal that's outside themselves, and then listening to that person when it comes to intellectual stimulation, being an example, and of course considering where that person is coming from, what are they dealing with. And in my experience, the coalition leaders that people fawn over, that people will do anything for, has these components. And so what are the 4 components of leadership? Idealized influence. So this leader is a role model. People see this leader as someone that is exemplary and has the capabilities to get things done, has an ethical code. Like, we know what this person stands for. This leader has a clear vision of where the coalition wants to go, and keeps a high level of respect and trust for others. And so when we think about the components of transformational leadership, in my experience, the leaders that really take the coalition to the next level are the leaders that people can respect, that people can count on, that really drives the mission and the vision of where the coalition wants to go. Inspiration, motivation. And so this leader then, who is seen as a role model, motivate followers to perform beyond expectations. So followers believes in that mission. Followers begin to see what it takes to achieve the mission of the coalition, so much so that I'm going to extend myself, that I'm going to go over and beyond. Colbert, what are you talking about? Listen to me. If you can get people at 9 a.m. to organize a coalition meeting and then table at a community health event between 7 and 8 p.m., they are extending outside themselves. They are going over and beyond for what the coalition needs to achieve. You're talking about 8 to 10-hour to 12-hour days where people are working to do this coalition to make sure the coalition is effective. So when we're thinking about people going over and beyond, It's like working past those 8 hours and or showing up early to impact what's happening in our community, making those extra calls in order for us to make the partnerships that we need to make the change that we want to see. So when we think about transformational leadership, that leader is able to motivate people to go over and beyond. And for me, doing this work for so long, the leaders that I've worked with like asked this of me. And I was like, yes, I will work extra hours. I'll show up on Saturday. I'll show up on Sunday because I know what this means. You know what I'm saying? I know what this means, not only for the coalition, but for the other community. And because I respect you and value, I'm going to do it for you. The third part of transformational leadership is intellectual stimulation, creativity, curiosity. A leader cultivates that. A leader propagates that. A leader encourages that followers, employees, coalition volunteers really try new ideas, really look at things different, and or really looking at how do we implement the strategy that we haven't implemented, but we think it may work, right? And so leaders that are willing to listen, and that's what we said in the chat box, willing to listen to what people are saying and or thinking. When I go into a community, I don't go and tell them whatever I think, right? Because every community is different. But giving community members, coalition staffers the opportunity to share their thoughts and ideas, that's what we're talking about when we think about transformational leadership. The last component is individual consideration. And this is one of those things where when we talk about workplace belonging, when we talk about vulnerability, authenticity, leaders taking special attention with each person to figure out what that person needs to be successful. And that's hard to do. We're busy, we have so much to do, but again, the leaders that I've seen that make the biggest impact in their communities, everyone that works in that coalition, that volunteers for that coalition, has a personal connection to that leader. And it's not foreign to our field because we know that a lot of us are in this field because of this, because that we know this person who took special attention, who listened to what we're going through, what we're trying to achieve, and helped us get to the next level, coached us and mentored us. And a lot of us, and for me, that's why we're here in this field. I'm gonna take a moment. I see some things in the chat box. This is very interesting. I love that point. Leaders adapt to each person's circumstances. Very good, very good. Before I move any forward, um, any thoughts, any considerations? Like, Colbert, I agree with you. I get it, but not really. This is what I needed. Any thoughts? Please share in the chat box. It's all about management being open to new ideas. Yeah, very much so. So I do this, but the CEO needs support, managers, as this is very time consuming. Yeah, I mean, I believe when we talk about managing and our people, we need time to manage. And so it's tough to think about all the things we have to do in our coalition, all the things we need to do in our communities, and then we have to manage and grow our field. So there's no easy answer for that, and it's almost thinking about what are going to be our priorities for this quarter or for this time of do we or what do we put in place to mentor and to coach our people. So some conversations, and what we know that the coalitions who are the most effective do have something in place for those relationships to grow. We've got it's also having a team that fits with each other, be fluid, responsibility, management team, select candidates that would be best fit for organization. Yeah, of course, of course. So many obstacles and reservations, creating jobs is key. Good point, good point. So what does this mean for our workforce? What does the prevention workforce look like? And what I'm going to be showing is data from 2 states, and I want to be clear that when it comes to data and knowing what's happening in our field, we need to collect more data. We need to do more work on finding out what people need and want in our workforce. So these are the 2 states that we're able to find some prevention workforce data, and but in general, nationally, we need to do more of that. I think I got 2 questions here. All right, so I've got 2 questions here. I'm gonna take a break to read those real quick. How does one approach a team member who's consistently reverts their victimhood and sets a toxic work environment, yet is not coachable? How does one know it might be time for the program and that individual to go their separate ways? And then my second question I have is, we can get a webinar about how. Yeah, we can definitely do a webinar on how to get youth involved. I know there's a webinar coming up, and then we can talk about how I can help specifically. So definitely we'll get that to you, Nicole. When it comes to people and toxicity and all of that, and all of that is very contextual. So I'm not going to try to address that specific question. But I will say is that work plans are helpful. So helping people being more specific to what are the targets and the goals and how that person is a part of that, having those types of conversations. Also figuring out what other resources or support somebody may need that the coalition can connect that person to. So really thinking about how can we be resources to people so that way they can be effective. And if those things aren't helpful, then we may not be the best place for that person. So just really thinking about what resources can we give people so that they can be successful.
Hey, Colbert, did you want me to read off one since you took a pause for Q&A? Do you want me to read one from the Q&A box?
Sure.
So the question is from Freddie, and he asked,
I just answered that.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right then.
I just answered both the questions. I think you probably should follow up with Nicole with the second question.
Yeah, I will.
All right, cool. So this is California, and what we're finding in California workforce survey, the average age in the field is 47. 63% are above the age of 47. 20% are nearing retirement. 39% reported being in prevention for more than 10 years, and 31 reported being in the field less than 3 years. So in California, when we look at the prevention workforce, majority of the workforce is over 30 years old. The average age is 47. And then when it comes to people who are new to the field, there's a good number, a good percentage of people who are new to the field when it comes to California. And this is looking at Missouri data. And so the two states that we're working with are California and Missouri, the data we were able to get from. So the average age in prevention field is in the mid 40s, very similar to California. Median age is between 36 and 41. Just like in California, 20% is going to retirement. Here in Missouri, it's 35%. 31% reported being in the prevention field for more than 10 years, and 43% of staff said they've been in the field for less than 3 years. So when we're looking at these two states, that prevention, when it comes to folks in a generation standpoint, folks who have been in the field for more than 30 years are staying past their 40s. And of course, those who are not in a field, that there's a good majority, and for a long time, there's a good number of people in our field. So when we look at workplace data, this is the first time in history where you had 4 generations in the workforce. And you can see that this is very much apparent in our prevention workforce. And so what does this mean about people staying and or leaving? We know that 37% definitely are most likely to leave the prevention field in the next 3 years. So in California, almost 40% said they're definitely leaving the field. And but 54% said they may be leaving their jobs, but they're going to stay in the field. So that's interesting, right? When people are in our field, majority of them want to stay, but also what's causing almost 40% to leave? Is it has to do with pay? Is it leadership? Is it the work? And those are more questions that we have to ask, so that way we can better serve our workforce. When we look at Missouri, about almost 30% are willing to leave the field, or think about leaving the field in 3 years, between the ages of 24, 39, 29, 50% are likely to leave the prevention field in the next 3 years, right? And then 32% between ages 24 and 29 are looking for a job in the prevention field. So we're looking at almost 30% of people in Missouri going to plans to leave the field in the next 3 years. And between the ages of 24 and 29, 50% are looking to leave the field in the next 3 years. And then 32% who plan on changing jobs, they do want to stay in the field. And so I think this is very much true to what we're hearing anecdotally from coalitions and from state to state, that people want to stay, but they're thinking of leaving. And if they leave, they may leave the field, but also if they are invested enough, they'll stay in the field. They just want another job. And again, when we think about from a leadership standpoint, how much does leadership play a role in people staying in our field, people leaving our field, and at what critical ages that we need to pay attention to, so that way we can maintain the workforce of our field. And what I think California and Missouri the survey data that they've been able to create and follow the last couple of years really tends to these types of questions. What role do we play, and what role does leadership play? Any thoughts about this data? Feel free to share in the chat box.
We did have a question. Colbert, do you know who was included in the workforce survey and how are people included overall?
So depending on, I could speak more to California. So the way California's prevention system works, they work through their health department, and then they're able, through the different health departments from the county standpoint, they're able to count who's doing prevention, and not only from substances, but also violence and to behavior when we think about overall prevention. So I can speak, that's how California looked at that who was considered to be prevention, and it's very much connected to their public health and their health departments. And I'm not too sure with Missouri data. I worked with Ricky Barton, who has more information in Missouri, and that's her state, and how they collected it, but also who they considered to be a preventionist. And so, and that's a question that we should be asking nationally. Who do we consider to be a prevention specialist? And what does that person do on a regular basis to be a prevention specialist? And then how do we track that person in their career? So just broader conversations to be had about our workforce and where we plan on going as a field in the coming years. Great question.
And then some of the general speculation is why people are leaving. Some people are saying bad leadership. Some people say or lack of grants. Someone even asked, do you think it's because of the approval of cannabis?
I don't know if there's a strong correlation to that when it comes to state by state. And in Missouri and California and their laws when it comes to cannabis, the surveys don't necessarily ask questions around specific substances. But I think that's a good conversation. That would be an interesting conversation to be had. Are the different substances, is there a correlation to substances and people staying in a workforce? And we don't know. And that's a great research question, and that'll be interesting to explore, and something that is just as a field we need to be thinking about. How do we collect this data, and what counts for our field?
And then the last question, and Astrid points out a good point, because a lot of our volunteers and coalition members, I know they may join coalition work later in life. Do you think it's because a lot of prevention professionals are close to retirement age? Is that a factor in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at I think the last slide. We're at 35% in Missouri is looking to retire, and 20% is near retirement in California. And average age is mid-40s. I think we, as preventionists, we need to be thinking about how do we prevent a workforce shortage, and we're already experiencing that since the pandemic. I mean, we can talk to coalition leaders across the country that they have jobs that just haven't been filled yet, and so when we're looking at the next 10 to 15 years, a mass exit of Gen Xers out of the field, like what does that mean? Not only for our coalitions and the work that we do, but for our counties and our states. Because when you prevent something from happening, it doesn't happen. So if there's a mass exodus from our field, is substance use going to go up? Is, when we think about consequence data, is that going to increase? Like what we don't, yeah, like I don't want to cause mass panic or chaos, but like we don't know what would happen after our Gen Xers leave the field and who's replacing them. And I feel that when we think about leadership and management, we can keep and attract more people if we're taking care of ourselves, if we're taking care of our people. We good to go, Sam?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Thanks. And so what does this mean when it comes to diversity? When you're looking at from the Missouri Workforce Survey that almost 40% of Black prevention professionals are voluntarily leaving the prevention field in 3 years. While when we look at their white counterparts, it's 27%, it's 26%. So if we're already having a workforce issue, and then when we overlay that with diversity, why aren't we able to retain our prevention professionals of color or of any identity outside of the dominant group? So another thing to be thinking about, if the nation's demographic is changing and we're having about 20% or more retiring soon, again, who's going to replace people who are retiring and leaving this work, and making sure what we continue to do to make our communities safe and drug free happens, right? So not just about the generations, but also when we think of the diversity of our field, what are we doing to make sure people feel included and people feel like they belong in our field? And as a leader or as someone who aspires to be a leader or a manager of this work, what do we do in looking in the mirror? How do we create a place where people of different backgrounds could feel like they're a part of this work? So a lot of things to be thinking about, and then in all of it, what's our role? What's our responsibility? So this is our workforce, and this is from 2 states. It doesn't represent the whole country, and at the same time, this is all we have. But we can see that there are a lot of similarities of what's happening in these two states. So what about the coalition? So Colbert, you talked about staff, you talked about people leaving, staying, diversity. What about the coalition itself? And we know the coalition is made up of 12 plus sectors. It's made up of volunteers, youth, government, and that various people and stakeholders are part of the coalition. Now, what does it mean for a coalition to be effective? And when we think about leadership and doing leadership, it's something that is very much connected to coalition effectiveness. So this study is a bit dated, and also I continue to see some of the challenges. So the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation looked at how effective some coalitions, and so they selected communities, 15 communities out of 300, and later funded 7 more and to follow how effective these coalitions were. And from following those coalitions that they founded, the 6 obstacles that they found to coalition effectiveness was coalitions not being poorly defined. So who are they, what they do, what coalitions agreed upon what is the community, who are they serving. They also found that there's ethnic, race, and class divisions that were obstacles to effectiveness. Past narratives, like what happened in the past impacted how effective coalitions are. And, I'll go to a community, and when we're doing their community assessment, and people are telling me, well, you can't do that because we tried that, and or they tried that, and we don't talk to them, and because they're trying to do that, we don't want to do that, and we've been beefing for 20 years. Yo, like every community, somebody's beefing, right? So past narratives, bringing people together. um, this article really talked about, when do you bring certain sectors into this work? When do you bring certain people into this work, and being strategic? And so people would bring, we often talk about the academy, bringing the right person at the right time at the right meeting. And when we don't do that, that is an obstacle. And also decision making. Who makes the decisions? How do we make the decisions? And what needs to get done right now? And so with the Robert Wood Foundation, when they compared all those coalitions, they found these are the major obstacles to coalition effectiveness. So my question to you all, do you agree with these obstacles? Or is it so dated that these things don't happen in my community? Colbert, that was 2005. We've solved all of these problems. We're all good and peachy. There's no beef. Like, if that's you, let me know and I'm gonna come to your community. Do you agree with these obstacles? Oh man, there's so much good conversation happening. Good, 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 good.
My favorite has been the comments on the beef factor. People said agreed. So you all are seeing these obstacles. Definitely agree. Right on for our community. It still happens. Very low community turnout, interest, access. Yeah, yeah. Other obstacles of living in small town. Everyone already involved in some of the activities. They just don't have time to do more, right? Misunderstanding is misunderstanding of why it's important. Very good, very good. And so if we know these are the common obstacles that um, impact our coalition's effectiveness, what do we do about it, right? So what do we do when it comes to how we define who we are and how we define the community in which we work in? What do we do about racial class divisions, right? How do we mend old wounds? Again, we work with thousands of communities, and a fact, communities have long memories, right? And so how do we address that? And sometimes before we can even go into solving the issue, we've gotta make our wrongs
right, right? And that right there may be what we are working on when it comes to building coalition and increasing community readiness for change. Very good, Joe. Very good. Very good. Here's another article when it comes to coalition effectiveness. So again, this is dated, but this is a literature review from 1980 to 2004, and really looking at the public population health outcomes measured quantitatively and qualitatively. And then any of these articles, they were peer reviewed, and they looked at coalition effectiveness. And I'll go back. Peer reviewed means that, for instance, let's say I write an article and I submit it to a journal, and Samantha, who's also in the same field, will then read my article and say, all right, this sounds good. This is pretty legit. Then, all right, we're going to publish it. So that just means that other people review the journal article to say that this has merit, this has value, and therefore it's going to be published. So that's what peer reviewed means. And so this literature review looks at coalition effectiveness internally and externally. And they looked and they did a database search, and they found 1,168 abstracts. And the studies that focused on coalition effectiveness came down to these 6 things. One, formalization, so rules. If a coalition effectiveness is based on how well it's formalized, how well are we structured, what do we do, how do we make decisions. 2 was leadership style. Coalition effectiveness is very much connected to leadership and how people lead. We also see that active member and participation. When people are part of the coalition, we really start to see the effectiveness. Diverse membership. When we have diverse membership, that means our strategies are more comprehensive. The way we implement is more comprehensive, and the way in which we solve our problems is more comprehensive because we have more people at the table. Agency collaboration. So people and agencies and sectors working well together, and our coalition coordinators and leaders are able to coordinate that and to finally create group cohesion. So when we look at the obstacles here, these are our answers. So if I'm looking at my coalition effectiveness and I want to work on this for 2024, how do we improve our leadership skills and competencies? How do we get a more diverse membership? When do we spend time to improve the relationships among our coalition members? We know the public health data. We know that mental health is at its worst when we compare now and prior to the pandemic. Our coalitions could be a place of belonging for people in our community. How do we make sure they feel like they can come and be a part? How do we inspire them to be a part of coalition and have and gain meaning? And in improving our work, what are the internal things that we need to work on in our coalition? Again, looking at that mirror. And we said it when we were in the beginning, what is good leadership? Are we listening? Are we paying attention to the needs of people? Are we inspiring curiosity? Are we looking to get folks who traditionally haven't been involved in order to do the work? Are we mending old wounds? Right. So coalition effectiveness is connected to all of these things. And it really comes down to how we treat each other. How are we treating each other? And if I want to improve my leadership skills and my competencies, what trainings do I need to attend? Uh, what speakers do we need to have, and or what type of leadership curriculum do we need to create for our coalition members to enhance their skills? So effectiveness is very much tied to how we treat each other. And that's why I believe transformational leadership it works in our field, because it's doing all the things that we already do and then some. And what brought us to this field are those transformational leaders. Like, I can still think about, and I still love and cherish my coalition coordinators. I can call them up right now. We stay in touch because how much they've impacted me, my friends, and how I grew up, right? And how do we do more of that? Any questions around these two articles or comments? I love it. So yes, let's share these ideas. So many Chamber of Commerce do free programs. Oh yeah, for leadership development. Yeah. Yes, team building and icebreakers help with group cohesion. Very, very good. I mean, y'all got the answers. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Promote diverse groups. Diversity dinners and dealing with division in the community. Very good, y'all. Very good. So here are some discussion prompts. And I'm not sure how you want to do this, Sam. Do we want to just do it over?
So if you would
Mhm.
like, if people are able to raise their hand, I could unmute them if that's an option, or if you just want to continue using the chat and I'll read them off to you. Let me know what you prefer.
Yeah, let's do both. Let's unmute and people answer the questions. And
Okay.
so uh when we look at the discussion prompts, and the questions are, is leadership a factor for your coalition effectiveness? Um, can the transformational leadership model address some of your coalition challenges? How can the four components of transformational leadership be applied to your coalition and or agency? And on to your left are the four components of transformational leadership. So, and I answer whichever question that resonates with you. Um, and I'm also want to hear from people, does this matter? Is this something we need to consider, not only in our local community, but as a field? Like, is leadership something we need to be um, really addressing? Do our coalition directors, managers, and coordinators feel like we've given them the skills to lead people and these prevention initiatives and strategies? Feel free to share in the chat box and or raise your hand. Just said going back to, we got a hand raised.
We have Astrid. Astrid, can you hear us?
I
speak?
can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
Astrid been killing the chat box. Thank you so much.
Hey, I kept typing in high school. Hey, you right? I use all what, 8 fingers, I think, maybe all 10.
I love it.
I bet I'm not the only one. Hey, listen, this has been great. So, the first thing that pops up in my mind is it's a related issue, and so not perhaps exactly, but I feel, I've experienced in the prevention world that because of whom we are serving, people who are experiencing homelessness, at least in the where I'm living, people with substance misuse disorders, families who are struggling, poverty, et cetera, et cetera. So often what we offer to the community is what they need, quote unquote. I'm making the air quotes now. What do we think they need? What are they lacking, right? Everything that's missing. And I very rarely hear us in the prevention world considering what those fine folks that are going through struggles, what they have to offer. What do they bring to the table? What are their strengths? What are their curiosities? What do they know that they want to share? How can we incorporate what they have to offer, not only from this weakness perspective of what they lack, but how can we flip it so we can say, we need to learn from you, or not even putting that kind of pressure on them, maybe I'll retract that, but from a strengths-based approach, knowing every human being has something to offer. How do we make that happen? So it's, like I said, it's not directly connected, but I feel like transformational leadership can happen not only within the context of our coalitions and the people that we work with, we see regularly in meetings, because you know how it is, right? Everybody attends all the same meetings, someone already referred to that. But what about the people whom we are serving? They have something to offer too. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that there are strengths, that there are passions that folks can share, even if it's just a painting class. It doesn't even have to do with quote unquote prevention, but if it has to do with connection, with passion, and with their interests, then that's already a win. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. That's been the chip on my shoulder, and I still don't know, but what can we do to invite people in to share what they have to offer? That's what I want to know.
I mean, I couldn't say it better than that, Astrid. And so in coordinating our coalition efforts, how can we get people plugged in to do those things? And making it seamless and effortless and empowering and engaging. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
And then imagine, this is where my thoughts go. Imagine, okay, if 1 or 2 people do it, they feel brave enough to say, I used to write poetry. And then maybe it could, the ripple effect we don't even know what the ripple could be. It could be that one person who is maybe not so much a leader within the context of where they live. I'm thinking about our friends that are without houses right now. That's the population we're serving in where I'm working. And I'm thinking one person stepping up, being invited in and taking that risk, taking that chance, being brave, can be the model to maybe their sisters and brothers who say, you know what, if she can do it, I'm a painter. Or you know what, or maybe this is a painting I painted 20 years ago and I want to show it. We never know. It could be an exponential rippling effect. So, see, I get excited even at the thought of it.
Woo! And let us know how we can help with that, Astrid.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to help.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody for letting me just vent.
Thank you, Astrid. And just as a tidbit, my background is actually in homeless services. I've worked with the unhoused population for almost 10 years in Jersey, DC, and Virginia. And I think the big issue is they're so focused on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, of course, shelter, food, just like the baseline, and then going into housing, the secondary stuff where, hey, supporting the community or even expressing their own, whether it be trauma, feelings, point of view, is so secondary that that stuff isn't addressed in that field. So you really do bring up some really important points. I appreciate you sharing that. Colbert, I'm gonna call on Sarah Robertson now. Can you hear us, Sarah?
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Colbert. This is great. And also thank you, Astrid, for starting this conversation, because yes to everything. And I think for like my experience in our coalition, we're in Brooklyn, New York, and we work with like young adults impacted by incarceration, mass policing, criminal legal system impact, and a way that like we're trying to come to it with a strength-based perspective, because our communities are not they're not lacking. They have many resources, many strengths, and many abilities because they've had to figure it out. You know what I mean? They don't need nobody coming in and saving them. They've been saving themselves for generations. So leadership for our coalition has been sort of centering those most impacted and most harmed as best we can in everything that we do. So I mean, we're a 7-month-old coalition, so we're not old, but we've just finished doing our first community and needs assessment, and the questions for the survey. I'm coming from a place of recovery. I'm a white woman in Brooklyn. Like I've not been impacted by criminal legal systems, mass incarceration, and policing. So what we had to do was talk to people that had been, who'd been incarcerated for periods of time, who had been stopped by police just for existing as a Black person in Brooklyn, and ask them, how can we collectively work together? Because data matters, but we also know that data can come in different forms. Numbers are one type of data, but people's stories and people's feelings, thoughts, experiences don't need to be proven. They are what they are, and they should be held as what they are. It's a yes and conversation, and we're working, like, I find that substance use prevention can be very linear, whereas if you look at, for example, gun violence prevention in Brooklyn, it's a very yes and conversation, and we're trying to approach substance use prevention as a yes and conversation too, because it's not just, we don't just want to stop young people from engaging in substance use. We want to talk to them about what's happening that is making them feel that this is what they feel they have to do in order to survive or cope. It's a yes and conversation that we're trying to engage in at a community level rather than just individual, because the young adults that I work with are amazing and have a lot of strengths, a lot of abilities that may not be, again, quote unquote, traditional, but their strengths and abilities, and yes, we have great entrepreneurs. Just because their past entrepreneurship may not be traditional, that don't mean they don't have the skills. So how can we collectively support our communities and working together rather than coming in and, like Astrid said, telling people what they need? Just collective community care.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you ended that with collective community care. So when it comes to the continuum of care model, is where are people, are young people who haven't been involved with a type of risky behavior. They need certain set of support, where those who are having had exuded those behaviors, they need a certain or type of support. And the way we're going to know their support is by talking to them. And when it comes to health equity and addressing the disparities, it can't be all quantitative, right? Because it's telling us the rate, but it's not telling us why. So as to what you're saying, Sarah, is as we address these risk factors, are we talking with people who are being impacted, how they are coping and how they would address the problem from a systemic level. And I think where your premise and where you're starting is great. And also it's one of those things of um, how do we center the marginalized and raise the funds and the energies to make sure they stay centered, right? Because that that changes after a time when it comes to grant funding and all the other things we have to do, right? So I appreciate your comments, and all I'm saying is I agree, and I'm only saying it in the way I can say it, but you said that beautifully.
Colbert, before we move on, the last question we have is, do you have any suggestions for getting more community members to participate?
So we've been seeing this across the country, uh, and across different coalition academies, that community members are not participating as they used to prior to the pandemic. Um, excuse me. And so we would just have to start thinking about other ways of engagement. So one coalition, what they did was they would reach out to, so I'll back up. So what this coalition did, because parents wasn't necessarily getting involved as they used to, the coalition went to different schools when parents were coming to pick up their students, their kids, and in that long line of parents of cars trying to pick up students, coalition members will then go to the parents and say, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. And so what I'm finding that the coalitions who are thinking outside of the box to recruit and retain are the ones that are seeing um, a little more engagement. So we kind of would have to start whatever we've done in the past, we just have to rethink it. I know a lot of coalitions have done some telephone interviews and also really going and reaching out and collaborating with organizations that they haven't collaborated in the past, and they've been able to see some successes there. So yeah, to my point, the coalitions that are seeing success and participation, they're doing things they haven't done before.
All right, that's all the questions for now, Colbert.
Oh, so what we got going on in the chat box? If you mind reading some of the comments, that'd be great.
Some of the comments are, I would take a look at your sector, community sectors, for example, brainstorm a group to invite a meeting from schools, churches, healthcare, law enforcement, parents, youth, local business. Margaret said ideas for engagement, meet them where they are, make it value added, like NCA teaches with them, what's in it for them. Like can the coalition give participants some kind of learning or experience that they could not get or afford on their own? Go where the parents are, report card pickup, registration day, sporting events. You'd be surprised how many churches such as Calvary have programs in place, great leadership development, and at times can provide services for free. Yeah,
Thanks.
just as a side note, I totally agree. So when I used to volunteer for the Girl Scouts, I don't know if you guys know, but free lunch programs, they still continue. Many in the country continue through the summer. So parents and families will go to a drop-off zone to pick up free lunches for families who qualify for that program. So the Girl Scouts that I volunteer with would meet up with parents and families, and we would offer, hey, here's some free Girl Scout programs or things happening in the area. And we really engage that community so much more just by going where they are. So that's just a personal idea I had myself. That's kind of random, but definitely been there and trying to engage difficult sectors of the community.
Appreciate that, Sam. Um, as we come to a close, and I'm going to give my time to Samantha because I know we've got some housekeeping stuff. I had a professor, a history professor. My major was history, and at the end of every class, he's like, "Who cares and so what? Why does this matter?" So whether it be like the whole Roman Empire, the Mongolian Empire, whatever we were really studying, like why does this matter now? And and for me, as being a CATCA consultant and trainer, and really worked with all of these communities with CACA and with great trainers and support. Um, you know, doing a better job taking care of ourselves. Um, when the pandemic happened, our work didn't stop, and um, being in this field for so long and knowing what we do and what we have to do, we don't always do a good job taking care of ourselves and each other and preparing the next generation to continue the work. And this webinar is important to me, and I was able to talk to Samantha about it, is that um, I'm not only thinking about our field right now, but also thinking about our field moving forward. How do we keep and retain and attract people to continue doing the great work that we don't necessarily always be given the accolades and the praise for? Um, People don't know, our communities don't know how much they need us, but we do. And if because we know that, how do we take care of ourselves and each other? And I appreciate your time. I had a great time, and let's continue the conversation at the National Forum, at the mid-year, and other opportunities to discuss. Sam?
Do you want to answer one more interesting question before we close out?
That was a great close, Sam. Like now,
I know, that's why I feel bad. It was so good.
from here.
I know. All right. I know we only
Yeah.
have nine. Oh, the quick question is, do you have any tips for working with business owners, especially THC stores? And I only bring this up because I know this is becoming a problem across the country.
Yeah, so I think the quick answer to that is um the community deciding what we expect from these stores and these industries. So um what do we want or what we don't want, and really deciding that this is what we're not going to allow as a community, and we understand that this is a business or whatnot. um and figuring out where is the middle ground to really be impactful. But again, that's very contextual, very much based on the community. Use your chamber of commerce to have those conversations, because I feel like chamber of commerce or other business leaders are good mediators of that conversation, because I know us. We can get on our soapbox and run people out of town, right? Um, but that's not necessarily feasible, right? And so, how do we get community champions or those people in our community that are receptive to having those type of conversations, setting the expectation, and deciding how to move forward? I'm not sure if that answers the question, but if we were had a long time, that's kind of like where I would start. What does our community expect of you and of this work, and who are we trying to protect? And this is what the data says, this is what we know, and this is our responsibility as community members.
Okay. Thank you, Colbert. I appreciate it. The chat is getting hot, so I just wanted to make sure we covered that. I'm trying to keep up. But yeah, we could go on to the next slides. We could go over upcoming trainings, some training and webinars. And I know I put it in the chat earlier. We also have a panel discussion this Friday on recruiting youth volunteers and leaders for impactful prevention work in a community roundtable. I could put that in the chat again. Let me do that right now while I'm speaking about it, because I know there were some questions about youth, and I really think that would be a great place to continue the discussion. So that is this Friday, and it starts at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I know we mentioned this earlier, National Coalition Institute. This is one of the many things that Colbert helps teach, and it's basically learning how to be a coalition and what to do when you get your DFC funds. So we have some upcoming webinars, we have a boot camp, we have a research into action. We actually have a Wednesday webinar next Friday in Spanish, and it's going to cover fentanyl strategies and how to identify fentanyl in your community and the history behind it. We have a coalition launch training December 18th. And then also some NCAs and boot camps next month. This can all be found on our National Coalition Institute website. And of course, if you have questions, please just email me and I could send you the links if you're interested in registering for any of these webinars or trainings. You go to the next slide, Colbert. These are some of the boot camps. And again, you could sign up through our website. You could reach out to me, or you could reach out to training@caca.org, and I can send you the registration. Our next upcoming boot camp is next week, and the next one after that is January 8th. You go to the next slide, Colbert. And then this is our coalition launch training. It's basically organizational development and learning the structure of coalition. This is going to be great for people who are starting out in the field. I know we have some coalitions in here that are not even a year old. So this will be prime and just perfect for anyone who's interested in just the structure and really getting started in the layout of the land. You go to the next slide. And this is all our contact information. I mentioned this in the slide or in the chat earlier, but our recording and our slides will be posted on the CACA website in the coming days at the latest Friday. So if you want to reference any of these slides, the recording, anything like that, you will be able to get it there, and you will be able to get all of our contact information as well. And then lastly, I think we have our survey coming up. So if you would like to receive a participation letter, and then also we overall like our feedback from our coalitions to see how we're doing and just get feedback on what other topics you'd like us to cover, please complete this survey. I'll also put the link in the chat box, but use your phone to use the QR code or use the link that I'm about to put in the chat box. And please complete this. If you're not able to get it, everyone should have my email if you're having any issues. But once you complete this, you will get a participant letter via email. And that's it. I just want to thank Colbert. Thank you for everything. The final slide is the one talking about how amazing you are, but I think everyone here knows you're a person of the people, you know your stuff, and you just know how to cover all the topics we really need to discuss and some challenges we have in our communities as coalition members. So I just really want to formally thank you, Colbert. You know, I think you're a great trainer, and just thank you for all you do for NCI and CATCA.
Appreciate you, Sam. Glad to help, and thank you for thinking of me and spending this time with everyone. Love y'all.